Have you ever walked away from a conversation thinking that, why did I say that? Or you found yourself completely overwhelmed in the middle of a confrontation? Or afterwards, you're wondering, what was I even thinking? It's happened to all of us at one point in our lives. But today, I want to share with you the one skill that you can transform your conversations, any conversation. And that skill is mastering your emotions. Because once you start to master your emotions, you're going to have the ability to communicate more effectively. And once you understand, as you manage your emotions and your responses, you'll even find that even in tough conversations, difficult conversations, it's going to become very more easier, and you'll find yourself more productive and even less stressed or overwhelmed. So I'm going to give a little bit of science surrounding what that looks like. And then I'm also going to talk about when you experience fear in your body. And you may have heard that it's called fight, flight, or frozen mode. And a lot of times in our lives, we get trapped in one of those. So when the adrenaline kicks in, our heart starts beating fast and our bodies begin to respond. So that's why we either get into one of those three. So hang on, because we're about to get right into it. Well, I want to say welcome to my channel. This is the very, 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 very first time you are here. Thank you. If you are returning, welcome back. Go ahead and like and subscribe before we get started, and share the channel. We want to grow the Speak Your Power Now platform with everyone, because we are making some difference here. I believe we are. So if you don't know me, I'm a psychotherapist, and I'm here to unlock your power of your voice, which is practical tools of communication. And like I said, I have some strategies in emotional intelligence. I have some strategies of just leveling up your communication skills, right? So just stick around with me, Dr. Cheryl, today, and let's get into this topic that's going to make a very big difference. So before we get into it, let me just give a little science surrounding what emotional, uh, you diving into what emotional regulation is, I should say. And I'm going to give you 6 steps later on. So stick around to the end, because I want to give you 6 managing steps that you can really take on and use today. And actually, when your brain, so let me talk about your brain. So when our brain is in an intense emotional state, what tends to happen is, in any situation, when you look at your emotions that may take over, you're reacting to something, right? You may be intensely having to make a decision, or you have to do something, and you might have to be wondering, or you're overthinking something. And in those moments, what are you really thinking about? And what you're experiencing is something called an amygdala hijack. An amygdala hijack, Amygdala hijack. It's a term that was coined by well-renowned psychologist Daniel Goleman in his book in 1996, Emotional Intelligence: Why It Can Matter More Than the IQ. And when I was doing my dissertation, I really was very fascinated with emotional intelligence and what that looks like for us when we are hijacked. And what that means is, when we're faced with stressful situations or negative situations, the amygdala is an emotional center part of the brain, right? And it gets raptured when it's triggered. And the emotional reaction that we have is, it cuts off the communication from the frontal cortex of our brain. I'm just talking about brain right now, which is the part of our brain that's responsible for the logical, the rational, and the decision making. So our rational and our logical thinking is right here in our frontal cortex. And this part of the brain, our frontal cortex, is relying on the good decision making that we're going to make. However, when it's hijacked, when the amygdala is hijacked, we end up in pure emotion. This is why you may find yourself saying or doing something in the heat of the moment that you may regret. And you find these things just with quick reactions. So these 4-second amygdala hijacks can do real damage. And they can be really quick. So you may find yourself at work and you may have an outburst, right? And this can begin to tarnish even your name at the workplace. It can harm personal relationships because you may say something very hurtful in the moment. It can destroy careers. We've seen things in on television, just seeing how people say things and it can damage their career severely. So in managing your emotions, I want you to really look at how you can have control over it. And it's critical. And the critical thing is about having emotional intelligence, that skill. And it's essential for your personal growth. So if you're here for the very first time, I like for everyone to write things down. So I'm going to get my handy dandy um, little whiteboard here that I have makeshift right here. So I want you to go ahead and get your paper out, whatever you're going to utilize today to write down your notes, because it's important for you to write it down because you have to remember how to come back to something and you may forget it, right? And your brain is going off like this. I'm telling you a new term today. So you want to make sure that when you are writing something down, you get to really keep it. So go ahead and get your journal out and let's get started. Let me just make sure that you're able to see the board. Good, perfect. All right, so let's get started. When you are looking at who you are or what you are, you need to begin to see what is happening with me when I have this amygdala hijack. So the first thing we need to look at is understand what is happening with the brain. So let's talk about when we're shifted, the experience of what's actually happening. So I understand that when you are looking at your life, you're looking at the simple fact, okay, I'm hijacked, something's happening. And the response is probably fear or whatever. And it's an identical response actually to excitement. So when you look at fear, when fear happens, your heart starts to race, your palms may get sweaty. There's a whole flood of adrenaline happening in the body. And we interpret these signals and we label them as fear. But I want you to look at the same type of things that may be happening to your body can be excitement. So we can identify them and rename them as excitement. So as you're going through, your brain is going to trigger, remember we said the fight or flight or frozen response, that amygdala hijack. So when that happens, you're going to either feel the same thing, sweaty palms, what may happen, you're frozen in the moment, you don't know what to do, or whatever the case may be. We've all had those moments. So the first skill I want to begin to teach you or begin to look at that when those emotions starts to happen, what can you do in the moment? What can you do when you know you got that big presentation? What can you do when you know you got that tough conversation that you got to have, but you know you got to have that difficult conversation? And what do you tell yourself what is the first thing you say? Oh my God, I'm scared to do that. Oh my goodness, I'm afraid to do that. And these little things plants those those mental blocks in your brain, and then you don't find yourself able to even speak on it. So then now you're finding yourself like, what do I do? How do I, how am I able to do this? So right now is we're going to begin to learn the steps. I'm going to give you 6 steps of how you can begin to shift your mental state and this emotional state and keep your prefrontal cortex engaged, allowing you to stay in control. Because remember, when you're in an emotional state, you are not in control. All right, so let's get started. Let me just fix my little thing here to make sure that we can see it. Okay, great. All right, so let's get started. The first one I want you to write down is when you are in a situation and you feel as though you can, and actually you can prevent an amygdala hijack. Let me just say that. You can prevent it. So I'm going to give you the 6 steps that you can actually look at and actually take my clients through so they can manage their emotions and stay in control. You know, I say this all the time because I love working with anxiety clients because I'm a product of that. Just to share a little bit about you, I had went from chronic being chronic anxiety with debilitating um, uh, uh, panic attacks and being able to not even function without medication at time. And then I really had to I had to learn the skill set as well to get control over my emotions. And I love working with clients that have the same thing because I like to share and let them know I'm human. I'm having a human experience that you too can get control over in any situation. And you don't have to feel out of control. All right. So the first thing, and this is what I deal with in my pies method, the first thing you're going to do is pause and breathe. So the first step is pause and breathe. Why am I saying pause and breathe? Because the first thing you need to do in an emotional surge is happening is pause. Because in that deep breath, in through the nostrils and the out, this gives your brain the moment to catch up. Because the hijack is about to happen. And it prevents you from reacting very impulsively, the thing that you may regret, the thing that you may say or do in that moment, you may regret. So it gives you that moment to then get control over your body. It gives you the moment to actually stay present. And I said, breathe deeply for 4 seconds. So it's the 4-second rule. Count yourself down or count yourself up. Do it again. And exhale on 4. Holding the 4, holding for 4, holding for 4, and exhale on the 4. So what it does, it activates your nervous system to calm your nerves. Now, what I will say is that anybody that's having a panic attack or an anxiety attack, the 2 major words that you never want to say to that person is calm down. Because they're not going to calm down. It's going to probably make them more annoyed or more frustrated, whatever the thing is that's happening. So if you're dealing with someone that's like that, or please do not say calm down. That's the worst thing you could say. Okay? So then the second step you're going to do after we have already did our breath and we're getting control, and actually it makes you present to the person in front of you as well if you're having these conversations with someone. So it makes you present to the conversation, makes you present to the situation, whatever's going on. This is what it does. So the second step, so this is number 1. The second step is that you're going to rename the fear emotion to courage. Okay? So we're going to rename it. Rename. Rename the fear. And this fear emotion to courage, and I'm just putting emotion. This fear emotion that we're having, this is key to make sure that you are now renaming it to courage. Well, I'm writing it big because sometimes we don't realize that courage is the key. Rename it to courage. All right? And this is the key. When you're feeling overwhelmed, take a moment to identify that emotion. And you may be experiencing, and you really got to take the inventory. This is why my PIES method works. You got to take the inventory. Is it anger? Is it anxiety? Is it frustration? What is it? Get the courage, have the courage to say, the most important thing I need to know is that courage is not the absence of fear. It's me taking the action in spite of the fear that may be happening. The fear of being judged, the fear of being rejected, the fear of whatever it is that's happening in that moment, the fear of danger, whatever it is. But the courage isn't about waiting for you to not feel fearless, because you got to move through it while you're feeling scared, while it's there, right? That emotion is there. So I have a course that I teach, and it's called Unlocking the Power of Your Voice. And in that course, what it does, it breaks down in the first phase how to discover the voice, your voice. Because what I teach is the skill to developing and understanding your voice is actually recognizing that your words have value. And when I introduce this portion, I have a worksheet that you go through. And what it does, it really gets you very clear about what is the conversation you're about to have. What is it that I need to say? And what is the fear that may be stopping me from saying what I need to say? So I can tell you from my own experience, and I do share some personal experiences that I've had either myself or a client that I may had. In a moment when you feel as though you are in a space where you may have lost your voice. So say it's with a parent. Say it's with a parent. You feel like your parent doesn't never understand you. You feel like you're grown now. The person never hears you. The parent, your mom or dad never hears you, whoever it is, never hears you. And you always got the story, never, 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 right? And it can all be true. But the fear comes up and you need to say what you need to say to this parent, but you respect them and you don't want to disrespect them. So in the moment, you got to look at how I can be able to stand, and don't let the fear be your enemy, but rather let it be a signal in the moment that you can be able to stay in the moment and learn the skills. Now, first off, you need to learn how to have the courage to move in that, especially when you feel like people are intimidating, or you feel like people, you respect them, but you need to say something to them, and it's very difficult for you to say. The thing is it's not for you to be perfect, but you just want to be heard, right? And a lot of times in life, we don't feel heard, and so we move away from the relationship. And that's where a lot of parents, or a lot of children, of adult parents and children, they get into it because they don't know how to shift the conversation from me being 10 or me being 20 or me being 30. And how do I now dance with this conversation with my parent without being disrespectful? And I even had to learn that with my own children. And when I had to learn that, I had to understand that they too are different. And I had to begin to move with them and be not so much a dictator or you're going to do what I say. Actually be a guidance when they ask and offer something if they decide to take it or not, and don't get angry about it. And being able to be on the opposite side of that, how do you now say something that's very difficult or challenging without losing the relationship? And this is the things that I begin to teach you how to find your voice. And it's simply renaming the emotion, saying to yourself, I'm angry right now. And what helps me to engage my frontal cortex is putting myself back in control of my emotion. Because sometimes when we're talking to a parent, you may go back to a time when she thinks that something that he or she said to you that was very hurtful, and it could be very real, but you're not in the moment, in that moment, in your body as an adult talking to her or him. In that, when you're looking from that space, you can now take control of what you really want to say and not go back to that little girl or that little boy that you were when you were now talking to them. Now you're talking to them in this body. So this is the things that I teach you and how to find your voice. Now, the third thing is reframing. And you hear me say this a lot, the reframe, because reframing is important. So you're going to reframe the situation. And reframing the situation will begin to give you the courage to go forth and look at the situation that you need to look at, right? So that's third. So as we discussed earlier, reframing fear to excitement is completely changing how you're going to handle the situation. Because if you think about a difficult conversation, like we just talked about, where you may have a difficult conversation with your parent, and instead of thinking that I'm nervous, you need to begin to tell yourself, and this is going to take time and practice, I'm excited to resolve this with my mom or dad. I'm excited to get down to nitty gritty I'm excited about it. I'm excited about them seeing me as a young adult, me actually not having a full form on tantrum, but actually talking to them. I'm excited about them seeing the new me. I'm excited. Change it into reframe of excitement. And it's going to take some time for you to do that. And so these little small mental shifts makes a big difference, because the reframe is where the magic happens. It happens in the moments of the reframe of the fear. You standing in the courage of you doing this and taking back your power instead of acting like you're a failure. Or what did I fail at? I'm going to have this conversation, but I failed so many times at having the conversation. They're never going to understand me. I want to do it. I want to start by, doing this, but I don't know if I could do this. And reframing, don't ask yourself, what if I fail? I want you to really desire to ask yourself, what if I succeed? What if instead of you not understanding that inner critic inside, that they won't listen, but say, my voice matters, and move through that lens and move through that, opposed to you moving in a factor of they are not listening. So the step of the reframe, this is where also I go through that with my course, where it takes you through a simple thing of identifying what you fear and acknowledging the root of the fear, especially when you're maybe talking to a parent, talking to somebody that you respect. That root of that fear may be valid. It may be valid that you are now been called all these things that you don't know what you're saying. You're dumb, you're stupid, you're this, you're that. And you may have grown up with that. You may have been devalued growing up. And that can be all true. But now you got to reframe any negative label that was ever given to you. Rename it, reframe it, and claim it. That's good, Cheryl. Rename it, reclaim it, and I don't even remember what I said, but rename it and claim it. That's it for your life. So share when you begin to move into this, I want you, as you are reframing the fear, any situation, remember, it doesn't matter what it is. You're going to look back and see how a story, a situation, how you can look at it differently. Now, here is something that I can say. When you are moving and speaking up for yourself, and I want you to look at some of the things right now, and I want you to write down some things that maybe a relationship that you want to transform, which you maybe with a parent, maybe with a boss, maybe with someone. And you may not think that your voice matters. And I want you to look at my voice matters, my voice is valuable, and I deserve to be heard. My voice matters, my voice is valuable, and I deserve to be heard. And you can begin to say these things to yourself. Because as you begin to move into these things, you got to look at your life. Because the way you communicate didn't just come out of nowhere. It just didn't. It just didn't come out of nowhere. You have created these things over time. And it's important for you to look at them head on and face them with courage. But courage is going to be done when you keep doing it. The fourth thing, so there's 6 steps. The fourth step is now you're going to ask yourself questions, clarifying questions, right? So you need to ask some questions. And a lot of times we do not ask questions. The fourth thing is ask questions. So in the middle of a conversation, and you may feel yourself getting emotional, you're going to pause and ask the question. Anytime you are feeling like your emotions are about to take over, you're going to do the 4-second pause. And then ask your question. Because it shifts the focus from your emotional reaction, and you're going to gather the information to ask a clarifying question. This is in a conversation. So the clarifying question will be something that what you need to get from the conversation. And it gives you a moment to calm down. It gives you a moment to shift the conversation if it's confrontational. So let's give an example. So in actuality, when you ask a question about something that someone says, that means that person also says, he's actually listening to me. So if the person is saying, you took the car and you didn't tell me you was taking the car and you always do this, and you're just like, you're getting more and more heated as the conversation goes. You could go, so may I ask a question? And the person may say yes. Just to clarify, and you could use the word clarify, just to clarify what you said, and you can repeat what they said. Did you say that I wanted to just ask a question just to clarify? You said that I always take the car on Tuesdays? And they said, yes, you always take the car on Tuesdays. And then you could even go a little deeper. So I just wanted to clarify that on Tuesdays, we agreed that I would take the car in the morning. And then you could start going in conversation. Do you remember that? And just have those conversations, regulating your tone also, and regulating your emotions is important in that conversation, that exchange. Because also that person, they're going to get into how you practice empathy, because that person may be off and running too with emotions. So you got to look at when you're having these two back and forth conversations, because it's important for you to look at it. The fifth thing is focus on the outcome. And I even say, if you can do this, before you even go into the conversation, that would be great. Focus on the outcome. Sorry about that. On outcome. So focusing on the outcome, what that does is in intense moments of emotions, you can easily lose sight of the bigger picture. So you got to constantly remind yourself of the outcome that you would like to see. You want to see, the conversation really resolved. Then you want to just have that completion to improve the relationship. Focus on what the outcome is. I would say never focus on that you winning the conversation. Maybe to improve the relationship. Get some sort of solution or resolve to the conflict. That's important because in the moment you will be able to now move in that. And the last one is practice empathy. Why practicing empathy? Because in intense situations, you got to remember to listen to the person that you're talking to. And remember that they also have emotions and fears as well that's happening. So taking the moment to understand their perspective, practicing empathy, sharing, going back and forth, it's important for that. Because these steps of what we're doing is letting the person know every day when you're having these conversations, these are the steps that you can utilize. There's 6 steps. And every day when you're going back and forth with somebody, especially in tough conversation, difficult conversation, where you got to give feedback and addressing the conflict or addressing these things, fear can creep up and you can get emotionally hijacked. And these steps will begin for you to regain that. So when you're feeling overwhelmed in a conversation, pause. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then renaming it, telling yourself, I may be frustrated, looking at what it is, rename it. I'm excited about how this conversation is going to go. I'm excited about what's going to happen. And when you do this, you're going to find yourself more grounded and focused in these conversations and not be frozen, not want to leave the conversation, not want to fight in the conversation. So this is why it's important for you to do these things. So let's just wrap it up. Some of the things that you've learned. The ability to manage your emotion is that core skill you need to have. It transforms anything around you. And when you show up in conversations ready to connect, your relationships and your everyday life will thank you for it. And preventing any amygdala hijack is you being able to reframe that fear. And with these 6 steps, you can begin to improve any communication you desire. Because I believe communication is that secret key to unlocking stronger relationships, meaningful relationships, any position you desire. Because remember, avoiding your emotions is not the thing. It's not about avoiding your emotions. It's about learning how to manage them because your emotions are real. It happens. How do you stay in control of that? Is learning how to effectively communicate through those emotions when they're high. And when you move through that more effectively, you're going to find yourself being able to move through life more effectively. So next time when you're feeling your emotions start to take over, remember these 6 steps. Take a breath and begin to rename it, feeling, reframe it in any situation, and take these small steps will have a big impact in any conversation. If you find these tools helpful to you, don't forget to subscribe for more insight and mastering your communication, your emotional intelligence, anything, and send in your questions. I want to know what you think about these videos because I'm here to really build people's communication, speaking their power now, finding their voice to apply some of these things, and to let us know about your next conversation that you had to apply some of these skills, because this is the way you can begin to build your communication and find your voice and really speak with power. So remember, you remember that your life is just defined by one single moment. Let that moment be today. See you next time.